Welcome back to Switch to Linux and another edition of DistroWars. And somebody asked me to review KDE Neon versus Fedora Plasma. This was of particular interest because I'm actually testing a Plasma desktop in production right now. It's neither of these two. So, but nevertheless, I have some things to say about Plasma, and they have made some changes. So we are going to talk a little bit about Plasma changes, just some things that are different. And in my opinion, oh my Lord, Plasma, what are you doing? But then some other positive changes as well. And then we will get into the DistroWars. So we're going to be a little bit heavy on the first one, which is going to be KDE Neon. Just to talk about some of the changes that we have. And before we get over there, though, let's go ahead and have a look at their websites. Now, Neon, according to them, is not even technically a distribution. It is a staging ground. What they've done with Neon is it is basically Ubuntu-based, except everything K-app, KDE applications, Plasma applications, all of that utilizes a rolling repository. So it's Ubuntu under the hood for the kernel and everything else in the repository universe, but it is K-apps on a rolling base. The purpose of Neon is to test KDE environments, just to do application development and things like that. Now, that being said, it is absolutely unequivocally stable enough to use. Now, there is a developer edition for the absolute bleeding edge, and there is more of a stable edition called the user edition. It is the user edition we are actually going to be looking at today. So you can come on over and grab a copy of it. They have a lot of things. This Shells, we're actually going to do an update probably on Saturday. Shells is a new company coming out. Linux Mint is working with them now as well. We'll talk more about that later, but what you can do with that. But nevertheless, you can come on over here. You can hit the download button up there in the corner. It's partially cut off by my my overlays there. But you can see the testing edition for the pre-release software, and you have the user edition for the officially released software on a stable base. So the stable base being, of course, Ubuntu. And then we have the unstable edition, just called the Type A Personality Edition, I guess. And then the developer edition, which has development libraries pre-installed. So you can go ahead and download it and go ahead and get that guy installed, and we will have a look at that one first. Now, before we get there, the other one we're going to use is the official Plasma Fedora spin. So this is the KDE Plasma. There are actually a whole bunch of spins. Let me just back up my URL. It's spins.fedoraproject.org. And we can see they have Plasma, XFCE, LXQT, Mate with Compiz, Cinnamon, LXDE, SOAS, i3. So you have a lot of different options there. So these are official spins. We're going to be looking at this one because the person that requested this video likes the Plasma and wasn't sure which one of the ones to use. Just go ahead and download it, and then you can go ahead and get that guy installed. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start in by having a look at Neon. So let's go ahead and wait for this guy to boot up here. All right, so here we have landed on the desktop. Now, one of the first differences between the Fedora and the Neon is which desktop session you're in. Neon defaults to Plasma, but you can manually select Wayland. Fedora defaults to Wayland, but you can manually, I said Plasma X, defaults to X, but you can manually select Wayland. Fedora defaults to Wayland, but you can manually select X. Let's go ahead and get logged in here. And the login screens, I believe, are similar. This uses SDDM. As I've remembering now that I'm actually working with a production Plasma, and I had to do some modifications to the startup files and such. And so over here, we are landing on the desktop. Now, I said we were going to talk about some of the changes. The first change, my God, Plasma, what in the world are you doing? Following good old-fashioned Windows, when you update Plasma libraries, it just downloads everything, and then it's like, you need to restart to install the updates. And then it literally looks exactly like Windows. It restarts, and then it sits there and updates before booting the computer. My God, are you trying to become irrelevant? That is insane. The other change is they've actually changed this is the same application launcher they've had. They've just highly modified it. I actually, initially, when I was looking around and playing around with this, I didn't like it because it was like, I liked the style and the design of the old one. The problem is the old one was actually a pain to use. And so after using this for a few days, I completely get why they changed it. I think this is a positive change. Although maybe I would have, never mind. I was thinking maybe let's go ahead and keep the old one and just add another one. But now there's already enough of these things anyway. So getting rid of the old functionality and style. Of course, the old one had the 4 buttons down at the bottom. And you had kind of slide over. It was a little bit of pain and not necessarily intuitive to use, although it looked cool. This one looks fine, but it's a whole lot more intuitive. Everything is over here. We have our places section here, and then we have our sleep, restart, shutdown buttons, and then we have our logout buttons over here. So those are just some of the changes that they have made to the desktop itself. You can see here that one of the challenges is that Plasma, while this is defaulted to use your desktop icons and such, you can turn that on and turn that off. It doesn't actually have a tool to easily set what is on your desktop. So there's ways to do it that are not all that painful, but they're not as elegant. I have a whole separate video about how to put desktop icons for things on your desktop. Now, if it's just an application, it's quite simple. You just right-click it. You can add it to the desktop. You can add it to the panel. You can pin it to the task manager. You can, add it to favorites or things like that. But places, if you go ahead and do like Dolphin and start up places, you can actually just go ahead and drag your home folder over. I mean, you can copy here, you can link here, etc. So that's how you can actually put stuff on your desktop easily. But nevertheless, that's a little bit under the hood there. So let's go ahead and talk about why you might run Neon. With Neon, you're going to get the pure Plasma experience. Everything is pretty much working as Plasma had intended because this is Plasma's official quote-unquote distribution. All of your applications are going to be possibly newer versions than you will have inside of your even your Ubuntu repositories. It's probably not going to be a lot newer than your Arch repositories. You can see there's 119 updates. I actually just installed this and updated it last night. So there's 119 updates since last night, indicating how much they constantly roll this thing around. So you can come on in, and really they've not made it all that user friendly, like not all that. They haven't geared it towards being used as a distribution because it is, in their opinion, more of a testing ground than anything else. Not that you can't use it as a distribution. So you're going to get the basic defaults: Breeze, Breeze Dark, Breeze Twilight. You're going to get just all the basics that have always been in there with really nothing else. As far as the core itself, it is, of course, based on Ubuntu. And let's go ahead and check the kernel on this guy. I didn't actually go through and do some of the testing that I usually do, so we're kind of flying through this guy blind. We're running 5.4, which is a pretty old kernel at this point in time. So that's kind of what we are getting there. Let's see if HTOP is installed. It's not. Let's go ahead and install it. All right. So here we have HTOP. It's running on 600 megabytes. Really not doing anything else. And even in a virtual machine, it is running a little bit snappy. As far as, close window. Yep, close window. As far as your software availabilities, anything inside of the Ubuntu repository you're going to be able to find. So let's go with simple screen recorder. That should be in the repository. So there we are. We have the simple screen recorder in the repositories there. You can see where it's coming from. It's the Ubuntu repositories. And to my knowledge, they don't actually use your snaps or flat packs. Let's just go ahead and double check that. So snap is installed, but there are no snaps installed. So you don't have to install snapd. Let's look at Flatpak. And it looks like Flatpaks are also set up and configured, although there's nothing installed once again. And I don't remember the command off the top of my head to check if the FlatHub repository is actually listed there or not. So we'll go ahead and leave that where it is. So what are you going to get with Plasma, KDE Neon, I should say? Well, you're going to get a basic Ubuntu build with the absolute latest K applications in the purest form that Plasma is ever going to be in, because this is really designed to test Plasma. It's designed by the people who create it. And so if you are looking for the gold standard of running Plasma, this is going to be it. We have integrated updates, a modern system, easy to configure, a lot of system settings. This Discover App Center has a lot of apps, latest editions of the K apps, and then anything else is available in the Ubuntu repository. You have snaps and Flatpaks ready to go, although the system is not relying on them. So that's what you get inside of KDE Neon. Next, let's go ahead and have a look at Fedora. So here we are on the login screen for Fedora. You can see it's effectively the same. Again, drawing attention that desktop session as defaults to Wayland, but X is a possibility. So that's going to be one of your major differences, fairly minor out of the way, but just be aware if you're on Wayland or if you're on X, depending on the software and things. Although a lot of software has done a lot of positive movement in the direction of being able to work with Wayland now. So I'm not really sure it makes a lot of difference for the average user, so long as the software you need is able to work. So here we've logged in. Theming is, I think theming is going to be very similar. This one looks like it's using more of a darker theme than the lighter theme. So let's go ahead and just see, out of curiosity, does it have its own theme installed, or is it just using the dark version of the themes available? So they have Breeze, Breeze Dark, Twilight, and Fedora. And it looks like they're probably using the Fedora. Although the Breeze says it's highlighted, it does look like from the display here, it looks like Fedora is the one that they are actually running. Now with Fedora, you're going to have a deeper commitment to open source. So whereas Neon might work on a wider range of hardware and be a little bit more user-friendly and install codecs and such out of the box, Fedora is not going to do that. Fedora follows this FOSS-only philosophy. Now, it's not impossible to get everything else to work, but it does actually not have the capabilities right out of the box because it's kind of against its philosophy. You can see here when I boot up Discover, it's unable to load applications, verify internet connectivity. Internet connectivity is good, so I am getting this issue. And to be fair, I did actually run Fedora Plasma for a while in the past, a couple years ago, on a production machine. And I actually had a lot of problems with Discover on Fedora back then as well. So you can get it to work. It might actually be telling me that because it's checking for updates in the background. As I was going ahead and getting this all set up and installing updates last night, it told me the same thing, and then a few seconds later it says, hey, there's updates you should consider installing, and I went ahead and installed those. So I don't know if it's doing that or if it's just like, oh, whatever, and there it is. Now it's back. So clicking in, we're gonna go ahead and see what our options are. You're probably on Fedora. The way they roll and the way they're not like bleeding edge rolling, but they have new versions that use the latest and greatest applications more frequently than an Ubuntu base, Ubuntu core does. And so with Fedora, you might get newer packages overall. In fact, I believe that the kernel is going to be new. So the kernel is 5.11. So it's a very nice kernel out of the box. Now, you're not using apt on Fedora. This uses DNF. So you're just going to do sudo DNF, and I think it's install htop. It's been a while. Oh, I'm not in the users. All right, let's see if I can drop through. There we are. Let's do DNF. Install htop. There we are. So the biggest difference, it doesn't really matter which package manager, just use the one you like the most. apt is nice if you're installing a lot of different things in sequence because you don't have to check for updates. DNF tends to check for updates every single time you want to install something, which might actually add to time. But if you're using that, most people are just going to have a copy-paste list of everything and just do it once anyway. Not a big deal. They're both easy to use. Commands are very similar. It's just one of them is apt and one of them is DNF. No big deal. And so what we're doing here is we're just going to go ahead and get this guy installed, and hopefully this is in the repositories. Now, some of the things you will not find in the Fedora repositories are multimedia, particularly things that require external or proprietary codecs. You're not going to find things like VLC is not in the codecs or is not in the repositories for Fedora out of the box, but there is a separate add-on system that you can add called RPM Fusion, which does all of that quite amazingly. Let's go ahead and install HTOP, and then you can see that this is actually running a lot more RAM, almost twice as much RAM running on Fedora. So not exactly sure why that is. Maybe it's Wayland is heavier or whatever. It doesn't feel any less snappy. It actually feels really fast. So if I didn't look at the RAM, I would not have assumed that it was using any different RAM than the Neon version was. Let's see if there's anything else installed for software. We had DNF Tragora, which is kind of like a Synaptic. I actually kind of hate it. It's like, but it is in there as well. So if Discover's not working for you, you have that. Otherwise, they're going to be fairly similar. So your biggest primary differences between the Fedora and your Neon is Neon is going to roll your K applications more frequently than the Fedora is going to. Because Fedora will keep the applications on this release, but they do a release about, I think it's like every 9 months or so. And so you got a brand new fresh refresh every few months. So they're not going to change all of the package versions in the middle of that time. Whereas if you want the latest K applications, Neon is going to roll into those more frequently. Fedora, though, is going to have newer applications across the board with everywhere else than Neon, because Neon is only exclusively based on the Ubuntu LTS. And the Ubuntu LTS likewise does not roll packages. So it's Ubuntu LTS with the new rolling K applications. You're not going to get that with Fedora. So in Fedora, you're going to have overall newer applications, but they're not going to roll as much. Neon, you're going to have overall older applications with rolling K apps. And so that's really your fundamental difference as far as these two guys go. So which one of these should you use as a new user? Honestly, if you are a new user to Linux, you're going to have a lot less frustrations on Neon. The reason is it's based on Ubuntu. Ubuntu is based and geared towards new users. They do not have a FOSS-only philosophy, and they are going to give you applications. They're going to give you media players. They're going to give you codecs, which could be proprietary. They're going to give you things that you don't even think about needing to install. Fedora more caters towards the FOSS first philosophy. If you're a FOSS first person and you're like, I don't want MP3 codecs on my system, then Fedora is going to be your best bet. This comes with a lot of good advantages in that if you're doing something in a high sensitive area, you are going to be a little bit more secure on Fedora because out of the box, it does not have or even package the possibility for proprietary software. You have to install RPM Fusion for that. If you do that, then you're kind of converting Fedora into most other distributions, which is just fine. Some people love Fedora for DNF. Some people love Fedora just for the way it rolls. Some people just love it because of the philosophy of it. And just how everything's working under the hood. So neither one of them is absolutely the best or absolutely the worst. It all just is going to depend on your individual use case scenario. So with that being said, let me know which one of these do you use the most? Do you like the Plasma desktop? And what do you think of this new Plasma updates where it wants to install updates on a restart? I think that's absolute Windows-like nonsense. Let me know your thoughts to that in the comments down below. Thanks for watching and hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.